Hello class, welcome to General Biology. Today we're going to cover Campbell Biology, Chapter 3, Water and Life. Now the molecule that supports life that makes it possible for a variety of chemical and physical properties is water. Water is the only common substance to exist in the natural environment in all three physical states of matter. The natural environment, you'll see water in the solid form as ice, the liquid form as liquid water, and the gaseous form as water vapor. Water's unique emergent properties help make life sustainable. The structure of the water molecule allows it to interact with other molecules in advantageous ways. Polar covalent bonds in water results in hydrogen bonding between the different molecules of water or between other substances that are dissolved in water. In the water molecule, the electrons in the polar covalent bonds spend more time near the oxygen atom than the bonded hydrogen atoms. The water molecule is thus a polar molecule with a slight positive and slight negative charge at different ends of the molecule. The overall charge is unevenly distributed. Polarity allows water molecules to form hydrogen bonds with each other, such as the example here, where separate water molecules are sort of semi-attracted to each other by different partial charges. Four emergent properties of water contribute to Earth's sustainability for life. These include their cohesive behavior, ability to moderate temperature, expansion upon freezing, and versatility as a solvent. Cohesion, collectively hydrogen atoms hold water molecules, or hydrogen bonds hold water molecules together. This phenomenon is called cohesion. Cohesion helps the transfer of water against gravity in plants, as it's moved up the root system of plants towards the trunk or toward the stem and toward the leaves. Water moves through a process of cohesion. Adhesion is the attraction between different substances. For example, between water and plant cell walls. So as water adheres to the surface inside a plant, as that water is traveling up, it's pulling more water with it. That would be cohesion. And eventually evaporates as it gets pulled toward the leaves. This happens in the phloem of plants. Phloem and xylem are both parts of plants. Let's see. Two types of water-conducting cells in plants. That's interesting. Water transport in plants. All right. Surface tension. Surface tension is a measure of how difficult it is to break the surface of a liquid. Oh, a correction. Inside plants. Xylem are what pulls water, is what water transports through as it travels from the roots to the leaves. Phloem is what transfers sap and material like glucose produced in leaves down toward the roots. So xylem is what water travels through as it goes up the plant. Getting back into surface tension, water has an unusually high surface tension due to hydrogen bonding between the molecules and the air-water interface, and to the water below it. This allows certain organisms to actually rest on top of water or walk across it. Moderation by temperature by water. Water absorbs heat from warmer air and releases stored heat to cooler air. Water can absorb or release a large amount of heat with only a slight change in its own temperature. when it comes to temperature and heat. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. It's also connected. Kinetic energy associated with random motion of atoms and molecules is called thermal energy. Temperature represents the average kinetic energy of all the molecules in a body of matter. Some molecules may have high kinetic energy and some may have low kinetic energy, and the overall average would be represented by the temperature. So higher temperatures usually involve a higher average kinetic energy. Lower temperatures involve a lower average kinetic energy. Now, thermal energy is the transfer from one body of matter to another, is identified as heat transfer. A calorie, or a lowercase cal, is a unit of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius, or the amount of energy that must be lost for 1 gram of water to decrease by 1 degree Celsius. It is also the amount of heat, the capital C calories is actually what we will see on food packages. When a food package says it's based off of a 2,000 calorie diet, it's actually 2,000 capital C calories, which is equivalent to a kilocalorie, or 1,000 lowercase c calories. The joule is another unit of energy. 1 joule is equal to 0.239 calories. 2 joules would be twice that number of calories. Or on the reverse side, 1 calorie is 4.184 joules. 2 calories would be equivalent to a little over 8.3 joules, so on and so forth. Water's high specific heat. The specific heat of a substance is the amount of heat that must be absorbed or lost for 1 gram of that substance to change its temperature by 1 degree Celsius. The specific heat of water is 1 calorie per gram degree Celsius. So, the water resists changing its temperature because it has a very high specific heat. It takes a lot of energy to change water by 1 degree Celsius, whether up or above, whether to raise it or to lower it. Water's high specific heat can be traced to hydrogen bonding. Heat is absorbed when hydrogen bonds break. Heat is released as hydrogen bonds form. The specific heat of water minimizes the temperature fluctuations to within limits that permit life. Water is not prone to change its temperature very quickly, essentially. Evaporative cooling, evaporation or vaporization, is the transformation of a substance from its liquid physical state to gaseous physical state. Heat of vaporization is the amount of heat energy a liquid must absorb per 1 gram to be converted to its gas form. As a liquid evaporates, its remaining surface cools because that energy was absorbed to convert into the gas state. Therefore, this is a process of evaporative cooling. Evaporative cooling of water helps stabilize the temperatures in organisms and bodies of water. Floating of ice on water. This goes into the density of water in its liquid and solid states. This is not true of most substances, but with water, its solid state, ice, is less dense than its liquid state. Therefore, ice floats. This occurs because of hydrogen bonds in ice are more ordered, making ice less dense. Once water reaches its greatest density, around 4 degrees, if ice were to sink, all bodies of water would eventually freeze solid because ice would fall to the surface. It would have no reason to eventually melt. Whereas liquid water, all the way at the bottom of the ocean's floor, if there was ice, it would float to the surface, allowing it to eventually melt. Therefore, there's not a fuel cycle of water continuously freezing over, which would prevent life from having access to liquid water. Also in the winter, any organism that lives under the surface as the surface freezes over, many turtles and many fish and frogs are able to survive while trapped under that ice layer, because not all the water freezes over. Many scientists are worried that global warming is having a profound change on icy environments around the globe. The rate at which glaciers and Arctic sea ice are disappearing pose extreme challenge to animals that depend on ice for their survival, as well as the potential of causing the ocean, the coast, to actually be more inland for multiple countries that have coastal surfaces, versus those animals that live on glaciers or snowy beds. Their land mass is decreasing. A solution is a liquid that is completely homogeneous mixture of substances. The chemical definition I'll give is a solution is when a liquid has something dissolved in it that is not the liquid itself. The thing that is dissolved is called the solute. The thing that the solute is dissolved in is the solvent. The combination of solute and solvent is a solution. An aqueous solution is one in which the solvent is water specifically, though there are other types of solutions with different types of solvents. For example, if something was dissolved in liquid gasoline or liquid bromine. A solution of salt water is salt dissolved in water, where the solid salt eventually starts dissociating as the sodium ions get surrounded by the negative side of water, whereas chlorine ions get surrounded by the positive side of water. Water is a versatile solvent due to its polarity. When an ionic compound is dissolved in water, each ion, the positive cation and negative anion, are surrounded by a sphere of water molecules called a hydration shell. Water can also dissolve compounds made of non-ionic polar molecules. Even large polar molecules, such as proteins, can often dissolve in water if they have ionic and polar regions, or regions with charge and regions with partial charge. Hydrophobic and hydrophilic. Hydrophilic substances are substances that like to be surrounded by water, and they are easily dissolved in water. Hydrophobic substances do not have an attraction toward water and are actually repelled by it. Oil molecules are hydrophobic because they are relatively nonpolar in their bonding. Hydrophobic molecules related to oils are the major ingredients in our cell membranes, which is why our cells do not easily leak out into the environment or let a lot of things come in when not necessary. Most chemical reactions in organisms involve solutes dissolved in water, so most chemical reactions occur in solution. When carrying out experiments, we use mass to calculate the number of solute molecules in an aqueous solution. Molecular mass is the sum of all the masses of all atoms in a molecule. Numbers of molecules are usually measured in the unit mole. Mass in grams and mass in moles is just like measuring temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius. It's just a different way, it's just a different scale. And usually when we look at chemical reactions, it's much easier to represent things in moles whereas when we want to visualize an amount, it's more relevant to measure them in grams. Specifically, a mole, though, is always 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd units. So 1 mole of bromine would be 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms of bromine. 1 mole of water would be 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd molecules of water. 1 mole of hot sauce would be 6 times 10 to the 23rd individual hot sauces. That's essentially what a mole is. It's a great way of representing a lot of molecules or atoms, but with a more reasonable number that's easier to work with. Avogadro's number and the unit Dalton were defined such that 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd Daltons is equivalent to 1 gram. Now molarity, that does not appear to be right. Oh, no, that's true. That many Daltons is equal to 1 gram, although we usually don't do conversions between Daltons and grams. Usually we talk about only conversions between grams and molecules. Now, molarity is the number of moles of a solute per liter of solution. If you had 5 moles of salts in 2 liters of salt water, then the concentration of molarity would be 2.5 molars, or molarity, 5 divided by 2. Possible evolution of life on other planets. Well, biologists are seeking life on other planets, have concentrated their search on planets that might have water, since water is so necessary for life on Earth. More than 800 planets have been found outside of our solar system. There is evidence that a few of them have water vapor, maybe not water ice or water liquid, or maybe not all three. In our solar system, Mars has been found to have water. Now there's the concept of acidic and basic conditions. A hydrogen atom in a hydrogen bond between 2 water molecules can shift from one to the other. The hydrogen atom leaves its electron behind and is transferred as a proton. Because a hydrogen atom usually is just a proton and electron together, the proton leaves and the electron stays. The hydrogen cation is H+. Now, as water loses a hydrogen proton, the remaining molecule is now a hydroxide anion, or OH-. Now, in reality, the molecule of water that received that lost hydrogen proton is now a hydronium ion, which is H3O+. Though it is often abbreviated as H+ to simplify different transfer of acidic protons. Water is in a state of dynamic equilibrium, wherein water molecules dissociate at the same rate at which they are being reformed. So water is constantly forming hydroxide anions and hydronium cations, which are constantly going back to form neutral water molecules, such as here. Though statistically rare, the dissociation of water molecules has a great effect on organisms. In other words, most of a container of water is neutral water molecules, and very, very little of it is actually hydroxide and hydronium. But it's still important. Changes in concentration of the hydronium, or in this case simplified to as protons, H+, and hydroxide ions can drastically affect the chemistry. If there is a larger concentration of hydronium, then those solutions are acidic. If there's a larger concentration of hydroxide, those solutions are basic, and there's an equal amount, then those solutions are neutral. Concentrations are equal in pure water when it comes to acidic hydrogen and basic hydroxide. Adding certain solutes, such as acids or bases, can modify the concentration of dissolved hydrogen or hydroxide. Biologists use the pH scale to describe whether a solution is acidic or basic. Acidic substances are those that increases the dissolved hydrogen concentration, proton concentration in solution, and a base is a substance that reduces the dissolved hydrogen concentration in solution or increases the hydroxide concentration. Strong acids and bases dissociate or dissolve completely in water. They fully break apart into positive and negative ions. Weak acids and weak bases are reversibly released. Therefore, very little of a weak acid will break apart into an acidic proton and something else, and very little weak bases will break apart into ions from the total amount of that weak acid or weak base. But they can still shift the pH of a solution. The pH scale, in aqueous solutions at 25 degrees Celsius, more or less room temperature, the product of hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions is a constant called or written as 10 to negative 14. The pH of a solution is defined by the negative logarithm of hydrogen or hydronium ion concentration, or pH equals negative log of H+. If you're more math inclined, that's negative log base 10 of hydrogen ion concentration. For a neutral solution, the hydrogen ion concentration or hydronium ion concentration is 10 to negative 7 molars. So negative log base 10 of 10 to the minus 7 is negative times negative 7, or a pH of 7, neutral pH. Acidic solutions have pH values that are less than 7, which are usually between 0 and 6.9, but they can go below 0 for very strange chemistries. And basic solutions have pHs that are greater than 7. Usually we think of the pH scale going from 0 to 14, but those aren't definitive ends of the pH scale. Most biological fluids in our bodies have pH values that range from 6 to 8. Now in our stomach, the enzymes of our stomach that dissolve proteins need to be in very acidic environments. Therefore, our stomach acid is very acidic, close to pH 1. Whereas the pH in our intestines is actually more neutral or more closer to basic, which is why the pancreas helps neutralize stomach acid by releasing carbonic acid or sodium bicarbonate to help neutralize the stomach acid as it goes from the stomach to the intestines, so that the intestinal enzymes are in a more basic environment and can better operate. Buffers, the internal pH of most living cells is close to 7. Buffers are substances that help minimize quick changes in pH. Most buffers consist of two components, a weak acid and its corresponding conjugate base, which combine reversibly with each other. A buffer is only meant to help prevent a sharp change in pH through the addition of acid or base. After the addition of acid or base. So to help make a pH level more stabilized. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels threaten water quality. The released carbon dioxide gas is the main product of a fossil fuel consumption. About 25% of human-generated CO2 is absorbed by the oceans. CO2 dissolved in seawater forms carbonic acid, which is called ocean acidification, slowly lowering the pH of ocean water, which can have disastrous effects for what is able to be dissolved in water, for what is able to thrive and live in water. For example, excess carbon dioxide. While carbon dioxide in general, like many other gases such as oxygen, can dissolve in water, liquid water, when it combines with water, forms carbonic acid. This can break down into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate anions. Now, you can further break down bicarbonate into another hydrogen ion and the carbonate anion, or the carbonate anion and hydrogen ion can combine to form more bicarbonate, I should say. HCO3 1 minus is bicarbonate. Carbonate is CO3 2 minus. But carbonate can also bind with calcium ions to form calcium carbonate. As seawater acidifies, positive hydrogen ions combine with carbonate ions to produce bicarbonate. Carbonate is required for calcification, which is the production of calcium carbonate. Carbonate is used for forming calcium carbonate in many marine organisms, such as those who build corals or those that build shells. We have made progress in learning about the delicate chemical balances in oceans, lakes, and rivers that are used to sustain the ecosystems that reside within. Now, when it comes to calcification rate, that increases as there is an increasing micromolar concentration of carbonate anion, the units being micromoles of carbonate anion per kilogram of seawater. As the concentration of carbonate increases, the calcification rate increases as well. And that's in units of millimoles of calcium carbonate formed per square meter per day. All right. Acidic is simply just a larger concentration of hydrogen or hydronium ions to hydroxide ions, and basic is a higher concentration of hydroxide ions to hydronium cations, and neutral is rather even. All right, that concludes Chapter 3 of Campbell Biology. Pleasure to have everyone in class, and, well, peace.